Rahim, Honorable Foreign Secretary, Excellencies, our former women ambassadors, members of the Diplomatic Corps, colleagues from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and other ministries, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning and Assalamu alaikum. This Women's Day, it is my immense pleasure to welcome you all to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to celebrate women as trailblazers, trendsetters, glass ceiling breakers, high achievers, professionals, colleagues, and homemakers. Ladies and gentlemen, to commence today's proceedings, I would first like to request Foreign Secretary Ambassador Cyrus Sajjad Kazi to say a few words.
Bismillah Rahman Rahim. Thank you very much. Welcome to the Foreign Office, ladies and gentlemen. Ambassador Fawzia Nasreen, a trailblazer in our history of the Foreign Office, Senator Sania Nishtar Sahiba, Ms. Amina Sayyed Sahiba, Ms. Nadia Jameel Sahiba, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. I am honored and indeed delighted to welcome you to the annual event organized by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs on the occasion of the International Women's Day. On this day, we celebrate the achievements, resilience, and contributions of women in our society as mothers, daughters, spouses, colleagues, and leaders. They have excelled in education, healthcare, diplomacy, politics, business, sporting arenas, indeed in every facet and sphere of life. This year's theme for International Women's Day is aptly titled Invest in Women, Accelerate Progress. It is important that we invest in their education, healthcare, and social advancement. We should endeavor to develop an environment that helps our women grow and prosper and encourage them to reach their true potential, because the true potential of our society can only be so realized. It is critical to empower women and mainstream gender-sensitive policies. They should have a say in policy decisions that affect their lives, because whatever affects their lives impacts our lives. We must strive to create inclusive environments for that foster the talents and potential of our women, enabling them to contribute to the development of the society. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, as the Foreign Secretary, I am particularly proud of our women diplomats. They are a diverse and talented group and play an instrumental role in shaping the country's foreign policy and promoting its interests on the global stage. They navigate with panache complex cultural environments, represent what is best about Pakistan, its values and priorities, and forge relationships with counterparts across the world. At the Foreign Office, historically, we have had the good fortune of benefiting from the sagacity of women leaders. Pakistan's first woman Prime Minister, Mohattarma Benazir Bhutto, was also the first senior most diplomat as well. Pakistan's first woman Foreign Minister, Ms. Hina Rabbani Kar, Pakistan's first woman Foreign Secretary, Ambassador Tahmina Janjua, and the list continues. Over the years, several outstanding women have made their impact and mark on Pakistan's diplomacy. Many of them have since retired, yet they remain icons of inspiration for us all, not just the women of the Foreign Office. I pay a tribute to their professionalism, their dedication to duty, and their resilience. I would like to commend PAFWA members also, who contribute with their supportive role in advancing Pakistan's diplomacy. We cannot succeed without their consistent support. Many thanks to women in the diplomatic corps represented in Islamabad who have made Pakistan the second home for their contribution in promoting our diplomatic relations and people-to-people contacts. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, today we are honored to host four very special women who have made significant contributions to the Pakistani society. They have stood out as pioneers and leaders in their respective fields, having overcome tremendous odds. These women of substance are a source of inspiration for women and men everywhere. As the first woman officer in the Foreign Service of Pakistan, Ambassador Fawzia Nasreen broke barriers and paved the way for Pakistani women diplomats who followed in her footsteps and are following in her footsteps. Dr. Shania Nistar needs no introduction. She has made enormous contributions in public health and social welfare. She has transformed countless lives and set new benchmarks for inclusive development. Miss Amina Sayyed is a trailblazer in the literary world. She has fostered a culture of intellectual exchange and creativity, inspiring generations of writers and thinkers. And Ms. Nadia Jameel is a tireless champion for gender equality, social justice, rights of children, and mental health. Ladies, I thank you for your service, appreciate your advocacy, and admire your grit and determination. Your contributions inspire us and help us shape a progressive, modern society that caters to the aspirations and ambitions of all of us. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, these women are among the countless Pakistani women who continue to shape the course of our progress and inspire positive change in our society. The Foreign Office will continue to recognize such women of substance and drivers of change. We at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs reaffirm our commitment to advancing gender equality and dismantling barriers that hinder women's full participation. Just to share a few statistics about women in the Foreign Office, we are Pakistan's most gender sensitive and gender empowered and gender balanced federal ministry. 25% of our officers, in fact 26% of our officers are women. As of now, and the number varies, 11 missions have women heads of mission. But what is most important and most encouraging is that the new entries into the Foreign Office, on average 33% of our new diplomats are women, and this proportion continues to increase. I am confident that with everyone making their contribution, we can build a brighter, more inclusive future where every woman and girl can thrive, achieve her dreams, and contribute to a more peaceful and prosperous society for generations to come. And the one place where they can start doing it is the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Ministry of Foreign Affairs, I would now like to pay a tribute to our former women ambassadors who have forged the way forward for Pakistan's exemplary women diplomats that is nothing short of phenomenal. It is because of your efforts, Madam Excellencies, that today, as the Foreign Secretary also mentioned, Ministry of Foreign Affairs holds the distinction of having more than 100 women diplomats representing Pakistan's flag at both home and abroad with distinction. Some of these greats are present amongst us in this hall today. Ambassador Fawzia Nasreen, Ambassador Shireen Safdar, Ambassador Nagmana Hashmi, Ambassador Iffat Imran Gardezi. Madams, we are extremely honored to have you with us today. Ladies and gentlemen, to pay a tribute to their vigor, valiance, and leadership, here is a short micromentary. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, now I would like to invite Ambassador Mumtaz Zahra Baloch, spokesperson, Additional Secretary, Strategic Communications and Public Diplomacy, to join us on stage as a moderator for today's panel discussion titled Celebrating Women of Substance. Madam, if you could join us on stage, please. I would also now like to invite our esteemed panelists to join us on stage amid your applause. Please welcome Ambassador Fawzia Nasreen, Senator Sania Nishtar, Ms. Amina Saeed, and Ms. Nadia Jamil. By way of their introduction, we will now have a look at a short micromentary introducing our esteemed panelists for today.
hear me? Am I audible at the back? Am I audible at the back? Okay. Um, so, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us on this special day for women. And I would like to welcome all of you and our special guests. We have four exceptional women who have made their mark in their professional fields. They have broken barriers, they have demolished stereotypes, and they have made all of us proud. Today, we would like to learn about their journey and the challenges that they faced in this journey. We would also like to learn from them how our younger generations can take inspiration from their life stories and learn from their experience. So we will start our questions, and I would like to begin with Ambassador Fozia Nasreen, who is a trailblazer. She is the first woman to join the Foreign Service of Pakistan. We are very proud of her. She is an inspiration and role model for many of us. So, Ambassador Fozia Nasreen, my question is, you are an inspiration for so many of us and a role model for Pakistani diplomats. What, who was your role model? What inspired you to join the Foreign Service when there was no woman in the Foreign Service of Pakistan?
Well, thank you for inviting me on this occasion. Your question is very pertinent. When I took USEC exam, it was way back in 1972. And obviously, women were not allowed to join the foreign service. Uh, so at that time, I wasn't really thinking about joining the foreign service as such. But nevertheless, I think by the time I took my exam and the results were announced, this was in 1972, when the administrative reforms were announced by the then government, uh, led by Mr. Zulfikar Ali Bhutto. And in 1973, foreign service was open to women. Uh, and then we were undergoing common training program, and during the course of the training, there was a director who was in charge of the group. Um, when we were basically submitting our list of preferences, I had not put foreign service as my in the list of priorities, but he basically said to me that I see that you have certain traits which probably will be suitable. I mean, this was his idea, which will be suitable for the foreign service. So why don't you opt for foreign service? So I did that, and I think subsequent to that, there were so many other women who were a source of inspiration for me in Pakistan and outside Pakistan as well. Uh, Ladies who were playing exceptionally well roles in their own domain. Um, Benazir Bhutto, I think, is an example which comes to my mind at the start of my journey. So I think there have been several women, prominent women in Pakistan who can be regarded. Muhtarama Fatma Jinnah, of course, has been a role model for me as well, because she also went through a struggle, a political struggle, and otherwise also in terms of basically trying to set a political course which probably she thought would be better for Pakistan. So I think the examples are several, and the source of inspiration we can draw from very prominent and exceptional leaders. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Sania Mishra, you are a trailblazer in the field of public health. You have broken barriers and achieved remarkable success, and you have also made Pakistan proud at the international front. Can you share some of the challenges that you faced in your career? And perhaps you could also share with us what is more difficult or challenging, public health, social welfare, or politics that you have now joined.
Very much, and first of all, happy International Women's Day to all the attendees here. Your question about challenges was a question I was asked at a breakfast panel also, where Foreign Secretary and I were there just about an hour ago. There have been various phases in my cycles in my career. I trained as a physician, I became a consultant cardiologist, then I transitioned into public health at a technical level, then I founded my own organization as a civil society activist. Um, the span of my career is in the international agencies. Uh, uh, and then finally, I joined government as a minister. So these are very distinct phases in one's professional life, and I've been blessed to have that exposure. Um, there was one particular challenge that I encountered, and I hit that when I was in a leadership level in government. There aren't, and before I come to that, there aren't any remarkable challenges that I can refer to from my time as a clinician or as a civil society activist or within the international organizations. But as a senior decision maker, as a member of the cabinet, as a minister in the government, there was one particular challenge, um, because I think that within our culture, there is an acceptance of women in senior political roles if they come from political families, if they have political men backing them, regardless of what their own standing is. But if you are a woman who's technically grounded and you've risen to that position on your own, there isn't acceptance of that. And that is one particular challenge that I faced and that I overcame when I was in the cabinet. But the reason why I raise this is this because it is a systemic flaw, and we need to address that because it is such a disincentive for other hardworking women who are well educated, who are technically grounded, who are astute as far as policy making is concerned, who want to build a career in politics, who want to serve the country, but the system is not conducive to their coming into policy making roles. The system is very conducive to women who have no professional backgrounds but who come from political families to rise to the top, but not for women such as myself.
So, do you think this is changing, and how do you think women like you can perhaps enter public service and succeed and reach to the top?
I'm not talking about public service. I'm talking about politics in general, because in our public service is very well fashioned in terms of rules and processes, and if a woman enters in the foreign service, she the chances she will rise very fairly to the highest echelons is very high. Even in other spheres of public service, as far as bureaucracy is concerned. But in politics, there's a particular stereotype. For a woman to be at the cabinet table, she either has to be deaf and mute, or she has to be from a political background. There, there are very few examples of women who have their own standing, their own professional standing, whose professional standing is recognized, and they've been invited to that table. And I was very privileged to be one of them. But the difficulties I faced, and I say this not out of bitterness. I say this with a very constructive intent because I think people need to recognize that here there is a huge barrier. There's a need for a mind shift, and there is need for a systemic change to enable these hundreds of women who could really contribute in politics. But but the system is not configured because their political allegiances matter, political loyalties matter. Your ability to contribute to policy and your ability to improve governance is what is really not part of the equation. I hope at some point it will change. And I'm again saying the reason I talk about my difficulties, which I overcame, is for some serious thought to be put into this.
Thank you. You spoke about stereotypes and breaking the mold. And for that, I would go to Nadia Jamil, who's an actor and a civil rights activist. So my question to you, Nadia, would be, as a prominent figure in entertainment industry, how do you navigate and challenge the challenge of gender stereotyping, and both on screen and off screen?
Assalamu alaikum. It's an honor and a privilege to be here among such fantastic women. And happy Women's Day, everybody. How do I go about breaking gender stereotypes? As an actor, it's not easy because I think the industry is very much driven by gender stereotypes. And it's very challenging to find roles as an actor that defy those stereotypes. Also, it's a ratings game where where you get the most money, and the most money is made in stories that are entrenched in gender stereotypes. So my own little way, I guess, is to be very specific with the kind of roles I accept, and to make sure that the roles I do accept are roles that I can learn something from, and that the individual watching might possibly go through a positive, cathartic experience from. I think as a mental health practitioner and a life coach, it's far more exciting. It's far more exciting to be a woman facilitating thriving, because I really believe that we can choose to be thrivers. And it's as somebody who has been a CSA victim, survivor, and now a thriver, been a cancer victim, survivor, and a thriver. Once you make that choice to be a thriver, then it's fantastic to stay there, and you want to stay there, and you keep working at it. And then it's great to facilitate that in other women and in other young people. So that's been very exciting. I think I'd like to write more exciting roles, maybe stories about the fantastic women sitting here, stories about the fantastic women sitting in front of me. I think there's so many exciting stories to be told of thriving, empowered women who have had this incredible journey. And I'm, wondering why more of us aren't telling those stories.
So what about your own story? How did you transition from the world of glamour and acting to a life coach and a civil rights activist?
I'm the least glamorous person I know. I never went in acting for glamour. I loved acting. I'm trained in Shakespeare. I'm a fellow of the Globe Theatre in London, an international fellow, and I worked there a couple of times. So Shakespeare has been my passion always. I have a love for language, and theatre was a very natural progression for me. I worked with Madiha Gohar, the late Madiha Gohar, and those were the days of the MRD movement in the 1980s. I was young. I was being trained by women like Madiha Gohar, Asma Jahangir, my own mother, and all of these young activists. So I think glamour was never a sort of a priority for me. I think change was a priority for me. Education was a great resource, and I think it still is a great resource. And children. Children I started working with children when I was 17 as a volunteer. It's been 30 years now working with them. And it's just organically I've gravitated more and more towards it. my happy place.
Ms. Amina Sayed, you're a pioneer in literary festivals in Pakistan. Can you share the concept of these festivals? How did you arrive at introducing the Karachi Literary Festival? Were there small events that led up to this big mega event? And more importantly, what inspired you to move into the world of literary uh, circles and encouraging young writers to come to the literary festivals and introduce their work?
Thank you for inviting me. And God, it's a great pleasure to be here. Uh, I was always very conscious of the fact that Pakistani poets, writers, novelists, that they are not getting the recognition and the acknowledgement and the awards that they deserve. And there were no less than any international writers. And yet I would go to other countries, particularly India, the UK, and I would see their writers being honored. And I felt that we have to do something about this. And that is when I launched Karachi Literature Festival in 2010. And in that we invited all brilliant authors, men and women, and provided them with a platform and introduced them to a big audience because the Karachi online literature festivals are free because we want people to come from all walks of life. And we also gave awards to our authors. We gave the best fiction writer, the best non-fiction writer, every one of them. And my ambition was that this would become a legacy. And actually, I will tell you a very short story. One of my literature festivals in Karachi, I saw a huge crowd moving in one direction. And it was getting bigger. And I got a little worried. I thought, eventually, I think I'll get accepted to question. But then I walked in towards the crowd, and he was in the middle of the crowd, but the same writer and my video. And these were his fans. And I felt that my dream has come true. He has become a hero.
That's very interesting. Now, having seen these women writers and um, scholars and poets that you patronize in these literary festivals, can you share with us maybe some key upcoming women writers so that who you think stand out, who you think we should be following, so that we know when we are going to a bookshop who whose book should we pick up.
Then there are lots of upcoming writers, particularly novelists. For example, Chandala Verma is written a brilliant novel. Maybe I'm talking about young upcoming writers, Sabine Javeri. And then I haven't published all of them, but I think they are wonderful writers. And then, of course, yes, Sandra Fancy is well established. I published some of her novels. And then there are established writers, and I think one of them is Dr. Sandra Smith. His book, Close Sight, I published, I think, in maybe 10 or 13 years ago. They also the past 13 years. And now I'm very happy to be publishing a new book, Fast 2047, taking writer scale. There's also Fausia, Dr. Fausia, whose book, Tapestry, Fausia Phil, the book Tapestry on how Pakistani women fought for their rights to a separate government, starting from then there's a doctor called Dr. Razan, who's an oncologist, who's published her book, The First Story. And of course, Kishan Ahid and established writers like Jana Razan. There is no shortage of brilliant women writers.
Thank you so much. That is very inspiring. You spoke about the challenges that women faced in different era in our history, and one such challenge was the time during the late 70s and 80s. And there were certain restrictions also. Not many people, not many young officers of our ministry knew that there were certain limits which were placed on women serving in the foreign service of Pakistan. So I would request Ambassador Fozia Nasreen to speak about those times and what were those challenges and restrictions and how did our women officers overcome those challenges.
Well, I think the journey insofar as women in the foreign service is concerned is full of optimism and pessimism. So there have been periods where I think certain restrictions constrained the female officers in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in getting their postings abroad and also in being able to attend important meetings, to cover important meetings. Um, but I think we had an exceptionally understanding Foreign Secretary at that time, Mr. Niaz Naik. So collectively, I think what we did was the female ambassadors in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs at that time, we had a meeting with the Foreign Secretary and we said that this is not going to be acceptable to us and we have to find a way in which this restriction can be overcome. In his own very sweet and relaxed way, he said, "You don't have to worry about it. I'll speak to the president and we'll do something about it." So that was his way of putting our apprehensions at rest. Uh, but nevertheless, I think uh, uh, single women could not get their postings abroad for a certain period of time, till such time uh, uh, Ms. Abida Hussain, she raised a question in Shura, how much of the funds that are being allocated to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs are being spent on the postings of female ambassadors. I think this is the question that was raised. And that basically triggered some sort of a thinking within the ministry and elsewhere that it's important for us now to really send women on postings abroad. So that was one way of doing it. Uh, but I think I can quote one incident which for me was very intriguing and interesting also. In the early 1980s, when I had returned from my posting in Tehran for a very short while, I was protocol officer. And we had a delegation, a Turkish delegation, I think the Prime Minister of Turkey and his wife, they were visiting, and I was attached with the wife of the Prime Minister. So late in the evening, we were there at the state guest house, and the then chief of protocol, Brigadier Zamir, he came to me and he said, the president is coming to meet the Turkish prime minister, call on him for a short while. So why don't you cover your head? I said, because this was a collective decision by the female officers of the ministry and also my own belief. I said, no, I'm not going to do that. So he said that, okay, then you stay somewhere where you are not visible. I said, okay, fine. So there was a screen. I went and stood behind the screen. The next day, the chief of protocol came and he said, the president has invited to his house for a cup of tea. So I mean, I just didn't know how to interpret this beautiful gesture, given the kind of feelings we had insofar as his policies were concerned. So I think political leaders at times can be a bit unpredictable also. Um, so our struggles has, I think, probably we've come a long way. The challenges have been there individually and collectively, but with the holding of important positions in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, I think probably some of the concerns and problems that were being faced by women, they have been addressed. And in this connection, I think I would also like to appreciate the ministry's hierarchy and the political leadership in recent years who basically has encouraged affirmative and positive policies and strategies. So I think I think we've come a long way and in our own way have adjusted to difficulties and probably come out from it very well.
Thank you. Um, Dr. Sania Mittal. Dr. Sania Mittal. You have spearheaded efforts to address poverty and social inequalities. In your experience, how do how do gender disparities intersect with poverty, and do you advocate some policy that so that women break this cycle of poverty?
In disparity and poverty and women's poverty in particular have a chicken and egg relationship. So one exacerbates the other. And in my own work as the Minister for Poverty Alleviation, when I was visiting communities, when I would visit their homes, I would see the imprint of that, very glaring imprint of that. The poorer the household is, uh, the direr the impact on the woman of the house. It impacts on food, on healthcare, on education, on every attribute of their daily living. So, as part of the framework that we had for poverty alleviation, gender empowerment was a very important component of that. And again, reflecting from the morning conversation, um, we started our poverty alleviation framework with a policy and strategy, but then we immediately followed it up with what was called a 50% plus policy for women and girls. And I want to stress on the word and girls because it was not just for women. And there were different instruments for different categories of likely disadvantaged women. There was, of course, a cash transfer program which had been running for a very long time. And under our government, we deepened that further, both in horizontal and vertical scales. By the time I left, it was reaching out to 8 million households. In addition to that, we expanded the conditional cash transfer program for girls. And what was most important was that we opted to uh, weigh the stipend in favor of the girl child. So, with great humility, I'd like to let you know that we were perhaps the first country in the world to do that. So, in a conditional cash transfer program predicated on education outcomes, girls got a higher stipend amount than the boy child. We then came with a policy to give a cash grant for girls graduating from fifth grade because that is where school dropout was highest. And I picked that during my interactions with women in households when I went to very poor communities and I'd see girls sitting there and I'd ask them, why isn't this little girl going to school? And I think these were one of the most heartbreaking moments from my time as with that portfolio. And the mother would tell me, because the school is very far, because I cannot afford the rickshaw, I cannot afford to send this girl who's just reached puberty a long distance. So we started giving them stipends for the girl child. It's very important not to get girls in a women empowerment policy framework. Then we launched a brand new health and education, I beg your pardon, a health and nutrition conditional cash transfer program, started from Khyber district. Uh, uh, and again, we weighted the stipend in favor of the girl child. And it was so heartwarming to see in that very traditional society, women with shuttlecock burqas come to the center with girls in their hands, very proudly displaying the girls in their hands, and for them to realize that girls are really valued. So this across the life course was one of the some of the interventions or the early spectrum. But then at the latest spectrum, we brought a condition, I beg your pardon, an undergraduate scholarship program, 50,000 scholarships in a year, an oversubscribed program which I ran for 3 years. And we had a 50% rule in there. 50% scholarships would go to girls. And as I was sharing this morning, as the secretary would remember, at every monitoring meeting initially, the male-dominated vice chancellors group would try and convince me, please bring this down to 30% because there aren't enough girls. And I'd just tell them, please go advertise. These girls who are not applying for these scholarships are getting married, are having families at the age of 70. You have to make this offer known to them. There was a similar loans program with a 50% conditionality. There was an asset transfer program which was quite well entrenched in interior Sindh, uh, with a 60% conditionality for the transfer of assets to the girl child, to the woman of the house. There was a street vendors program where we really encouraged women to come forward and apply. We had a number of care services where there was a dedicated entry point for women and separate abodes for women. The point I'm trying to make is that yes, we had a welfare initiative which was deep rooted. It was a priority of of the then Prime Minister. I had the privilege of working with him and having his support to do the right things, to uphold merit, to be very impartial in the way we executed, and not to hold social protection hostage for political reasons, which is what sometimes unfortunately happens.
Sorry. Dr. Sania, how do you respond to the critique that cash transfer programs and financial support do not, or perhaps are a barrier for people, especially women, to break the cycle of poverty?
So I think this is a very important question. And when you design a suite of interventions within a policy framework with welfare as an endpoint, you don't. I think the key thing is that you don't think linearly. You don't think in one dimension. And I think that is part of what we were able to change, because you should not expect that everybody wants a handout. Yes, there are people who are disabled, who are differently abled, I beg your pardon. There are individuals who are unable to work, whom the state must help with a cash handout. But not everybody needs that, and not everybody demands that. Uh, the 12th grader does not need a cash handout, who was from a disadvantaged family, requires an undergraduate scholarship. The 5th grade girl requires a stipend for the rickshaws to continue to go to school. The woman who has a biryani stall in F7 doesn't want a cash handout. She needs a little bit of loan to further her business. Um, and in the rural areas, I saw over and over again, people had solutions to their own problems. And for our asset transfer program, we would ask them, "What do you need?" And the woman of the house, who's completely uneducated, would tell us, if you give me money for a cow, I will sell the milk, I will supplement my income, I will give milk to my children. If you give me additional money and I have chickens, I will feed them eggs every day. So, which is why I think your question is very important, because when you think welfare, you can't just think handouts. You have to think about various strands of interventions which resonate with the requirements of different disadvantaged people. And what is most important is that you tell them that you're not doing them a favor, that you are a servant of the public in an important position by stroke of chance, and that you are handing back to them what is their due, because they pay indirect taxes on each and everything. And all that you're doing is giving them back what is their rightful share.
Thank you. That was very fascinating. It's clear that you're very passionate about this topic.
That I am.
So, Nadia Jamil, you are also passionate about another topic that we would like to touch upon, and that is about trauma and impact it has on career progression in, especially for women, men also. Um, can you share with us your thoughts on this matter, and how can one overcome trauma and succeed in life, and perhaps the role of men and your extended family in supporting you in overcoming this problem?
Um, right, great question. So I work with children in orphanages, some of them government orphanages, most of them government orphanages, and I've been working with children for over 25, 30 years. As somebody who works with the most vulnerable children in Pakistan, I have to be an optimist and I have to be solution oriented. Otherwise, I would have a nervous breakdown. I would just pack up. So the aim is always to know that with every difficulty there is need. So there is a solution with the difficulty. There is a solution. There is a way, and that is the first and most important step. As an individual, you know, and you decide that there is a way. That there has to be a way. That I am not a victim. I will be a survivor. And then the dictionary meaning of survivor is someone who doesn't die. No, that's not enough for me. I am not someone who doesn't die. I am a thriver. How do I become a thriver? What are the ways that I can facilitate myself out of any trauma, transgenerational or whatever happened in childhood, and how can I facilitate others? Trauma is a heavy word, but we have to remember the triggers are always external. The trigger is the smallest part of a gun. The ammunition in the gun, the barood, is always here, always internal. And that is what you need to facilitate in people. And when it comes to women, this is something I learned when I had cancer, and I happened to be in England, and because I'm British Pakistani, I happened to be cured by the NHS, and I was alone. It was COVID. There was nobody there to be with me. It was just me and my 13-year-old child and cancer in Cambridge. But there was this incredible ecology that held me together in healthcare. It helped me. It supported me mentally. It supported my child. And when I come here and I work with children, I have to work with their mothers. And then I have to work with their fathers if their fathers are around. And immediately I understand there is no ecology supporting anyone. There is no ecology. There's no ecology in healthcare. There's no ecology in the educational system. Obviously, there's no ecology in the orphanages. There's no system of supporting. And I think supporting mental health care is very important. It's very, very important. There is no health without mental health. It's all holistic. It's all tied in together. So ecology, when you as Madam was saying, when you teach a man, you teach an individual. But when you educate a woman, you're educating an entire family. What level of awareness are you instilling into that woman? How are you instilling into her knowledge of her rights legally, what rights she has, and a lot of people don't even know the rights that they have spiritually, or within their in the framework of their religion, or in the framework of their constitutional rights. It's a question of empowering men and women of their rights. And then in families, it's a question of facilitating and counseling parents how to be adults in the relationship so that they are not traumatized teenagers shouting at another traumatized teenager. And how to facilitate men to be able to support their women. That is another learning. And I think when you're being solution oriented, then you have to facilitate and bring the men on board if there are men around to be on board. Because for me, I know that I am where I am today because of my mother, my grandmother, my aunts, but also my father, my husband, my brother and my son. it was both of them that taught me what an empowered, strong woman could look like. Now, how can I facilitate that in in an environment that is unaware that that is a potential possibility? So you open that potential out. You bring in a family that is unaware that you can work together as a team. What does respect look like in a relationship, in a marriage? What does teamwork look like? Why do we assume that because a person is working class, they cannot be brought to awareness of these things? They can, and their families can and do thrive. Children I work with, when they come in with their parents, when they come in with their you know, caregivers, they often leave the bureaus and go back to their families, and they thrive because it's a question of consolidating the ecology of the whole family and bringing a unit together. So I am a great believer in solutions and in systems being built, and I'm hoping that we can all get together and create systems because people, leaders, heroes, whatever, they do not survive. The systems do. So my hope is that we can all one day invest in a national child protection system so that we have healthy adults. Because when you invest in the healthcare of your children, you're actually investing in the healthcare of tomorrow's adults, and you're investing in the mental well-being of this nation. So yeah, and I'm excited because there's lots of potential.
Thank you. Ambassador Fawzia Nasreen, we were talking about support systems and the environment, the ecosystem in which women can thrive and succeed. Did you see or find such an environment working in a completely male dominated uh, profession, especially when you joined being the first woman to walk these corridors? Um, how did you find the support system in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the fact that you were the first woman? Um, did you find partners, your seniors, your colleagues who helped you along the way?
Well, I think that's a very important and a good question also. Uh, I think I can consider myself very fortunate to have worked with people who lent me exceptionally sound support. So I think from that point of view, I would appreciate my people I work with and people within the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. But most importantly, I think I can probably mention about my first posting to Tehran. I was sent there in 77, and that this was basically a sort of a kind of dilemma for people working in our mission over there. The ambassador then was Mr. Aslam Khattak, and he said this lady is coming and this is the first time we are having a female officers amongst ourselves. So what should we do about her accommodation? Who's going to look after after her, sort of a thing, the stereotype thing. So in any case, I I think probably in their own very subtle way, people working in the embassy over there, all of them, and I went through very difficult period also. I saw the revolution in Iran, the war, and so on and so forth. But they all were very supportive and took exceptionally good care of the needs of a female officer under those difficult circumstances. And I can say with immense happiness and satisfaction that we were able to establish lifelong friendships because I was treated as a member of the family and they were treated by me as a member of my family. So I think that posting of Iran changed or
uh, changed completely insofar as working among the male colleagues was concerned. And subsequent to that, um, I mean, I've had different postings where situations were challenging, but nevertheless, I mean, for example, I was in Kuala Lumpur when the plane crash of the then president took place, and I was supposed to leave for a visiting fellowship program at Oxford University, and a friend of mine had arranged a dinner party for me. So, and I got this information through someone who was working in my house, that I've received a phone call from another person and this is what has happened. So immediately I told this friend of mine that I probably will have to leave. And so I was trying to get in touch with the ambassador. The ambassador was not available. So I went to his house, and then after that, I went to the embassy and got the driver and said to go and bring the ambassador to the embassy. So, and we took very quick action on what is supposed to be done, what is going to happen the next day. And we were very well not only informed about what is happening in Pakistan, but also the protocol that had to be arranged. So there are a number of incidents which basically I think I can recall and narrate, but it's going to be too long. Nevertheless, I think probably a close partnership between the male and female officers and colleagues is very important. And this is the only way that I think probably we can further the goals of the foreign policy and also achieve the full potential and full the objectives that we are set out to achieve.
You mentioned that your driver told you about the plane crash. Obviously, this was before Twitter and perhaps cell phones as well. How do you think diplomacy has changed and evolved over these years? Is it easier today than it was when you were in the service, or is it more challenging?
I think it is much more challenging than I think in the 80s or 90s because of the communication and information technology revolution that has taken place, access that people have to information, immediate access that people have to whatever is happening, the incidents and events. So the space for basically reacting to a certain situation for diplomats has narrowed down. So I think it's much more challenging because your source of information has to be very sound, and in addition to that, updated, so that you're in a position to immediately respond to whatever query is going to be made by by the journalist or the media. So that is one thing. I still recall when we had earthquake in October 2005. It was, I think, Saturday or Sunday weekend. But in any case, immediately I was receiving calls from the political leadership over there. What help can we extend to you? And I had to get information from Pakistan, which was slow in coming because obviously this was such a colossal kind of uh, event that had taken place. But nevertheless, what trying to say is that you have to have very quick responses to any situation that occurs, and your responses have to be in line with whatever is developing. The second thing I think probably uh, the space for diplomacy has become much more complex. You cannot separate the traditional and non-traditional security challenges that we confront. So the diplomats have to be well versed with the sustainability, development, and other issues. And it's important, I think, why it is important because your security challenges are complex now. So I think probably these are the only two things that I can say, and also because societies have evolved. So what is happening is that you cannot really have just government to government relationship. There are a host of other lobbies and interlocutors within the environment that you are functioning in. So you have to develop a networking arrangement with the other actors within the society, not just going to the foreign office and greeting and all that. So I think these are the three things that I can point out.
Thank you very much. Now that we are talking about diplomacy, Dr. Sania Mishra, you have also operated in a multilateral environment and inshallah are going to take up a very important position as the CEO of Gavi. Uh, how do you see women in the multilateral uh, arena, and uh, any advice for our young diplomats in terms of your own experience?
Well, in the multilateral system, you need to have some value to survive. You I you either have to have a technical value, a subject or a technical value, and if that is the case, you have a place there, or you need to be supported by a very powerful country. So, in the multilateral world, the country that you come from has a huge bearing on the gravitas that you have. And then, of course, there are a lot of people who survive because of their technical capabilities. But let us not underestimate that there's politics there as well. Politics is everywhere in every organizational context. But with respect to women, I think that the glass ceiling effect, because when I sit with colleagues in different international agencies, we have similar stories to share about how to manage husbands when we're traveling internationally, and how to manage home, and the thing about the work-life balance. That is not unique to Pakistan. That is something that women all over the world grapple with. And in the multilateral system, it's all the more acute because you have international touch points. Travel is such a salient part of your work. But yes, the glass ceiling effect is very much there in different shades and sizes.
Thank you. Ambassador Fawzia Nasreen mentioned that diplomacy has evolved, and it now involves engaging with people in the society, different aspects of it, and it includes, of course, an important aspect of diplomacy is cultural diplomacy. So that brings me to Ms. Amina Sayed. Um, how do you see the power of books and literature in propagating an impression about a particular country? I know you are again a pioneer. You took Pakistan Literary Festival to London. How was that experience, and how was the reaction from local British people when you brought this literary festival to London?
Actually, I've organized two literature festivals in London, and I found that in London, they were oversubscribed. There were people who, I mean, I'm delighted to say that they actually flocked to it. I mean, both Pakistanis and British people. And I think the reason was that I find that Pakistan is so under promoted in the UK. And people are very curious, not politics, but also about the economy, the culture, the authors, the education system in Pakistan. So it was a great success, and I was very encouraged. I feel that these festivals should be organized regularly And I remember I was in London some years ago, and I saw in the papers that a house in which Jinnah was living in Hampstead, that was up for sale. So I went running to the High Commissioner and I said, please, please buy this house. So he said, what are you talking about? These are millions of pounds. So I said, well, for the Pakistan government, it's okay. I'm sure they can afford to pay millions of pounds. And I gave the example of Nehru House, which is such a center of events and I mean, people flock to Nehru House. And I really wanted that done, but uh, again, it didn't happen. But I do feel that there is such a wonderful response to the literature festivals. I really feel that in a place like London, in order to promote, I would say, the real image of Pakistan, I think we should have a permanent home for Pakistani cultural activities.
Thank you. This is very interesting. Do you think culture and literature um, is an afterthought as far as our policies are concerned, especially in terms of budget? Or is it just that we are not very um, um, literary people as a society? What would be the main reason why we are not paying so much attention to literature and culture as some other activities, for example, the IPL and sorry,
Uh,
PSL?
Ji. Well, I find that there's enormous interest in literature and culture. I mean, judging from the really tens of thousands of people who turn up, and I think they come there to meet authors and they flock to them. And part of my motive is also audience development, in order that the audience should get into the habit of interacting with writers. And I know that many of the writers who came to our literature festival would say that, the feedback that we got, because every session was followed by a Q&A, and they said the questions that were asked, we didn't realize that our books were being understood in that way. So it was a great author-audience dialogue. But yes, I think the government should take a part. I know that when we have these literature festivals, that foreign embassies and consulates in Pakistan are very supportive because they regard it as a diplomatic tool to promote their countries. They invite their authors to come and speak at these festivals. Um, so I think it's a very important diplomatic tool, and I think it would be wonderful if the government could support these literature festivals, not just in Pakistan, but in international capitals as well.
Thank you very much. We have time for maybe two questions from the audience. And
Can I just add one thing quickly to Amina Appa's?
yes.
I just want to say that I've come back after 8, 9 years. I've come back after 8, 9 years and of living in Cambridge, and it is such an exciting time to be Pakistani. It is so exciting to see the literature that's coming out, the music that's coming out, the culinary sort of the different kind of culinary adventures. Foodies and food entrepreneurs are going on, are doing. It is such an exciting, beautiful, sports-wise. I just recently went to this Jeep rally that these young boys from Gujarat organized. And out of there is so much happening that the world doesn't know about, it doesn't know enough about. And it's just such a raw, exciting, and fantastic place. It's beautiful. So I think it's just, I really do hope and wish that the state invests more in projecting intelligently all the amazing, fantastic things that are happening in Pakistan at every single level, in every single province.
I think this is a very good segue to the questions that we will be asking from the audience. We have a woman at the back. Maybe she can.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. I'm Malika from UNHCR. First of all, happy Women's Day to all the incredibly strong and resilient women across the globe and here in attendance as well. My question is to ask Dr. Sania Nashtar. You spoke of a systemic change that will have to take place for women to have a say at important tables that do not come from strong political backgrounds. If I may ask you to maybe enlist or like name maybe 3 things that shall happen in that systemic change, like what do we need to accomplish to make or to make the first steps in that systemic change? In your vision, like how you envision that systemic change to take place? That's my question. Thank you.
For focusing on the solution, it's that's the most important part of addressing the challenge, as you also very rightly said. I think that in order to address anything, you have to, number one, have an explicit policy. So I think political parties